What's up, guys? Welcome back to the channel for another video. This time we're taking a look at the ROG Ally X playing the new Cyberpunk patch 2.13, which brings FSR 3, which more importantly carries in-game frame generation, which is the big point of this update for Cyberpunk. And I really want to focus on 900p 25 watt frame generation gameplay, so let's get into it and take a look at settings and some comparison. And taking a look at the settings, here's what I'll be using with FSR3 quality, medium textures, low crowd, and mostly medium settings here with a couple of low you can take a look at there, and 900p windowed borderless. That's what you need for frame gen to work here anyway. We do have the new XeSS 1.3 also added into this patch, which is actually a really good option, but doesn't work with frame gen, so I might check that out in a future video. For now, we'll be using the FSR3 and frame generation with some comparison of that being on and off here in the video as well. So that's pretty much what we'll have there. 2.1 is still in here as well, which is what 3 is really based off of, but brings in the frame generation features. We also have a new dynamic resolution scaling option here, which I'm not using in the video, but I have been messing with it and works really well if you want to set up some targets for your sharpness, your frames per second, resolution, and use that feature. It's actually surprisingly good. And again, of course, 900p window borderless here for the game. So let's get into it. We'll look at some comparing here. Now we'll start with the benchmark. Even though it's not super indicative of real world gameplay, it's nice for some consistency here. And we can see frame gen off versus frame gen on here on screen. And both of these, of course, work really well. Before we had frame gen and we had FSR 2.1, we tested that a lot with all the resolutions, 720, 900p, 1080, and even though we're focused on 900p here because it is a great sweet spot for this game, it works well across the board with the other resolutions as well. And frame times stay great for the game pretty much even in real world on this device when it comes to frame gen on and off, but I'm really focused on what kind of performance we get with the frame gen on in comparison, and it's really good. And when we get into some real world stuff walking around, this game stays playable without frame gen. Of course, Cyberpunk's been running really well on these devices, and it's been fine without frame generation as well. But I do think it's a great option, and it's something that I think they've made a lot of leeway on with the input latency, the visual quality, the ghosting and artifacting, and things that we get with these features, because it's actually working quite well. And I praised in-game frame generation in Black Myth Wukong and how well that worked. I've actually played most of the game and all the bosses with frame gen on and haven't had any problems, and I kind of feel like it's almost that good in this game as well when it comes to the in-game. I'd like to see FSR 3.1 which brings the better features for the upscaling, but this is working really well here, and I think it's a great option, especially at 900p. Now we all know that Dogtown and when you get into the Phantom Liberty DLC, performance really tanks in a lot of areas. It does not run as well as the base areas of the game. It never has. They have made some progress in making it better, but it's never been as high of a frame rate or as smooth of a frame time as the rest of the game. But it always has been fairly playable. With in-game frame gen, it actually mitigates a lot of that issue. We still get some of those stutters and issues that will happen, but for the most part, the experience, especially on the VRR display, stays a lot smoother for me with frame gen on, and the perceived input latency really isn't that much different or that bad. I've used it in and out of combat, and for the most part when I go between no frame generation on and trying to aim and stuff like that, and I switch to frame gen on, I really don't have much of a difference. I can tell because I'm used to testing that kind of stuff, but I think they've really come a long way with it. It could use some more improvement, of course, but it's definitely playable, especially in single player games like this, where if it's good enough and the performance feels good and the frame times are good, it might be worth it. And I think at 900p here it is for Cyberpunk. Even over here in some of the areas that run a little worse in Dogtown, you can even get down into the very low 30s in areas here without frame gen when you're playing. And it's fine and stays playable, but I actually think it's a little bit better with the frame generation on. I didn't have any problems playing this way in the same spot either. We get much better performance as far as our frame rate, and I think it works out well. You can also pull off 20 watts with no problem. 22 works here, but I was just interested to see what we would get at the 25. But yeah, the gameplay experience in Dogtown, in other base areas of the game, I just think all felt really good with in-game frame generation being used, and hopefully they'll continue to update here and even bring the 3.1 with the better FSR and upscaling. But I think this is a great option, and there's some headroom here. If you want to have higher settings, go for it. If you want to lower them for more frame rate, you can do that. If you want to go to 720p and get even more performance, you can do that. Or if you want to go to 1080, you can actually pull that off as well. And I think in-game frame generation here actually helps with all of that, especially as you get into the higher resolutions. But 900p certainly does stay a sweet spot here on the Ally X, especially for Cyberpunk. It's really grown on me. It's really a way that I've been playing the game for a few days here and really like it. Even when I kind of pull in more NPCs and have some fun with the cops and stuff here and get some more going on, I don't really get big hiccups or frame time problems or anything with in-game frame gen. No perceived giant leaps in the latency for movement and all of that. So yeah, all in all, I think it's worth checking out if you haven't already to try in-game frame generation with this. If you aren't using in-game frame generation, maybe also check out Intel's XeSS 1.3 because that's also working really well when you're not using frame gen. And with the VRR display here, I think it also works better than what you see in those screen captures to kind of show you how smooth it is. But yeah, it feels great to play. It looks great this way on the screen. And this is probably the best that Cyberpunk has run on any devices, but certainly on the Allies at this point. But anyways, guys, I think that gives you an idea what the performance is like now for Cyberpunk here, especially at 900p, 25 watts with some frame generation. All right, thanks a lot for coming to check out the video as always. I really appreciate it, and I'll see you in the next one.